And the video.
I might need that. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:36 PM. I'll take the roll. Alita Hall, Christine Kennedy, Ann Dixon.
Here.
Hillary is not here. Kimberly Shockley.
Here.
Amy Anzalone.
Here.
Anna Isabel Dos Reis Quinta. I'm here. Kristen Denusis.
Here.
Kristen Bagley
Here.
and Russell Hill. Here. Mr. Cowell, could you provide the emergency notifications for
In
the,
case of emergency, you can exit out this door, return to your left or right, and go back out the entrance that you came in.
and I see approval of minutes for August 2nd. Were the minutes sent out?
I sent them out yesterday.
Okay.
Did people get them yesterday?
Yes.
Everyone had a chance to look at them. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes for August 2nd, 2023?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for August 2nd, 2023.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Next item is town manager update. First being the CHS sewer project update, and then the Tyoke water drainage project, which is new to this committee, so a lot of explanation is welcomed. Mr. Curley.
Bottom line is money. That's the bottom line with Tyoke. So for the high school project, first of all, the council did approve a sum of approximately $500,000 to go to the through the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank to go to Fuss and O'Neill for the design and engineering of the Coventry High School wastewater project. Well, hopefully that grant from Senator Reed should be coming aboard sometime in December. Obviously, with the issues in Washington, it got delayed. So when talking to our grant writer, she's pretty confident that that's going to happen. The grant itself, we won't have actual use of until the spring, April or May of 24. So we cannot stop the project until then, which means we need to continue to pump until then. And then the project itself is between 9 and 12 months. So the pumping needs to continue that whole time as well. So we're probably talking about $700,000 or $800,000 in pumping. It's going to cost us. We have yet to determine the funding mechanism for that. So that's something that the superintendent and I and the council and the school committee are going to be working on, trying to identify where that money is going to come from. So the 540 is going to start the design. The money from Senator Reed will pay for it. $1 million of that 3.2 is going to come from the bond that was kind of put in the original application, because that is the part of the project that's actually on school property. So $1 million of the bond is going to go towards this Coventry High School sewer septic system. So that's that project. The second project is the Tyoke water drainage issue. So there's been water seeping off Tyoke School for some time now. We've realized that more recently with the development of I can't think of the name of the street in the back of it. Oh, not OB, East Shore Drive. So East Shore Drive development.
Like of the property?
Water coming off the property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Leaving the property and going to the into the neighborhood.
So we used to run off into the woods, and now the new neighborhood is there.
Now there are no more woods.
Yeah, so it's because all the woods are gone now, so now there's nowhere for the water to be absorbed. So it's contributing to some issues in the neighborhoods across the street and so forth. So we've done some research into how to mitigate that. So that number, which I thought originally was going to be between 250 and 300, is now 650,000 to rectify that issue.
Clarification, that's just to rectify the school's portion of the issue. There's
Correct.
other portions of the problem.
So there's other issues there as well. The good thing about this whole situation is that at the same time, we're going for a grant for runoff around the Lake Tioga area. We submitted that today. So that grant was about 700,000. For that portion of it, we included the Tioga School as part of this project, part of this grant. So the total grant we're looking for is 1.3 million to pay for the original project around Lake Tioga and the school project. What I'd like to do as well, similar to the high school project, is look for the 20% that we owe on that grant to come from the school bonds. Whatever that number is, I don't know what that number is, 300,000 or 400,000. But again, that's for the conversation. So that's the update on the Tioga School drainage issue. Answer any questions, I can try.
Any of the costs for that drainage go back to the developer? Are they responsible for any of that?
That's something that our legal counsel is looking at right now. To try to break it up, like they're responsible for X, we're responsible for X.
But just to understand, school existed.
Yep.
Water drained off of the property.
Correct.
Someone put in a development, but it's the fault of the school that water drains off of the property.
Legally, we're responsible to capture our own runoff. So with that going outside the parameters of the school, we are responsible for it. However, to your point, we feel the developer should have taken that into consideration when he was doing his engineering and design plan. Which we don't think he did. So we currently are pursuing some legal actions against that development to see how much of that he will be responsible for. But right now, we've taken the whole number on to submit to the grant and hopefully get that paid for.
It's the solution at 600,000, does it include like engineering or is it just?
Everything, it's the whole thing, yeah, engineering, design, is basically gotta create, I guess, positive runoff, they call it, where it's able to be navigated and cleansed naturally to the same time before it gets sent out, probably to end up at the Tioga at some point, yeah, so whatever that route is, that's the process. Originally, we wanted, because we dug some test holes, Russ and Don and had witnessed, they dug some test holes. They wanted to put some underground tanks in the parking lot. But the engineering firm said that wouldn't be sufficient to handle the water. You'd have to dig up the entire parking lot, put tanks in the entire parking lot, which wouldn't be the proper solution. So that's kind of where we are. That's why we are where we are right now.
I think it's important for us to consider as we digest and process this information is Tioga's allotment in the grant and in bond is $500,000. And so if you say, we're gonna use part of their allotment to remediate this site improvement problem, that does take away from the opportunity to correct some other issues that, we may be able to identify or we would have identified as we go to this stage, versus stage 2 and stage 3. And so seeing that number being so big, it's a bigger conversation for this group to make sure everybody understand the impact on that school, or do we look at that number being, I'm just gonna use my own words off the top and then a reallocation, like we just need to kind of have a conversation about all of that.
Yeah, and you said 20%. You want to come from the bond.
What?
20% of the whole
Louder,
1 point.
Kim?
You mentioned 20% is of this bond, you would want to have come from the,
That's our share.
but you would want it to be 20% of the entire project, not of the 650,000.
20%, well, the 20% of the entire number. And then I would say the fairest way would be 20% of the number that just the school's responsible for.
So 20% of the 600.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
understood that.
So, I have a question too also about like when you put the plan together and you submit it to RIDE, it gets approved based on what you put in it. Would that mean we have to amend? No,
Go finish your, if that's your question, I'll go
Yeah,
ahead and answer that.
that's my
So-
question.
So within the next several weeks, you're going to have an approved RIDE stage 2. And the memorandum of agreement is just going to list the school and the dollar amount. So you're likely going to see Tioga Elementary, $500,000.
Okay.
In the scopes of work, we purposefully kept it broad, and we have site improvements
Okay,
as one of the line items. So you could grab that $300,000 from this line item and use it towards that project. As Don mentioned, we may have to reduce some of the other scopes of work there, or recognize some savings from other schools. But that would come much later, when you would amend the MOA. And RIDE would like you to do that later in the process. The only comment I have about both the sanitary septic project and the Tioga one, if you're gonna be using money from this stage 2 and this bond, you need to make sure that those projects go through the RIDE School Building Authority process, which we're happy to help with. But we'll have to, your consultants will need to be involved in giving us information, because you will want to get reimbursement on that money. And particularly at the high school, that sanitary project is one related to safety, which I'll talk about in the presentation. We need that so that you can get an extra 5% bonus. So it'll all work out, but there's just a lot more coordination that we'll need to have to make sure it's all done cleanly. And in the high school one, we had 1.2 million under sanitary septic.
Any further comments or questions?
I just have one more question about the high school. If we know that we're gonna be pumping through spring of 24,
25.
oh, 25, okay. Have we reached out to negotiate a per pump price with any company? I mean, if this is
So-
guaranteed with a company, we should be
Yeah, we went out
asking
to
to
bid.
negotiate
We
something.
went out to bid, and it was originally, the company was charging us $2,000, per load. And the bid came in lower at $1,750, so right now we're paying $1,750 per load for that contract.
Which is 7,000 gallons. Is that right, Russ?
7,000 gallons.
7,000.
Anyone else?
The other thing we did, just so everybody knows, is, we built, I don't know what you wanna call it, structure, we built over the pit, so that keeps rainwater and snow and other moisture out. So, because if you remember in August and September, we were just getting crazy amount of rain. 3 inches of rain multiplied by the length and width of that tank is a massive amount of money that we're basically pumping out rainwater. So we put a cover over the structure to keep some of that out. So, that's. That's all.
That structure is 90 feet long and 12 feet wide. It's quite an area. We put, like portable garages. Again, just to keep the stuff out. And it is helping.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the RIDE Stage 2 project presentation prioritization approach.
I'm handing out copies of the presentation just to help
Can you look at that now?
take a look at that, in case you can't see it on the screen. So congratulations on the bond package.
Don, I can't retire that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was fun. Good times. Go to the next slide.
I do have to give me a lot of credit. We both went to all the open houses, all the parents, did a lot of grassroots work.
You guys did a great job at Philippa.
Thanks.
So these are the three things we're gonna talk about, update you on the RIDE Stage 2, talk about project prioritization, talk about the OPM and construction delivery methods, and then the project timeline and schedule. I want to give you an update on the RIDE Stage 2. So we received comments, and Don, I was speaking with RIDE yesterday. They called to apologize that they reviewed the wrong submission. They reviewed the one that we submitted in February, not the one in September. Yeah, because a lot of the comments were not applicable. So they said they're going to issue some additional comments, so it'll come to you, so when you get them sent up to me, we will submit them. They want the responses back by November 27th, which we will do so, we'll copy you, and others when we send the response. But based on the discussion with them, it was a very complete submission, they don't have any concerns. So, review comments due November 7th. Right now, I don't need any action from you. I was wondering, was there any work yet done on the FEI grant?
No, because that grant required us to pay a share,
Correct.
and the share that we have to pay is embedded in the bond.
Correct.
And so I didn't want to get started on something, and then if the bond, didn't pass, then we wouldn't have our share to contribute to that. So we have not started anything with that. The only thing that we're working on actively is the auditorium at the high school, and that's being funded by 2 different grants.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
What's the intent of the fund?
FBI is, the big project is the gym at the high school, which is gonna be the floor and the bleachers. There was science lab work, there was
The fitness
bathroom work.
Not bathroom,
no, Fitness center and sound and lighting and what.
Now, is that sound and lighting, the auditorium coming from any of the auditorium project you're doing now?
Auditorium project we're doing now, the furniture grant provides the chairs. And we have another grant for arts grant that we can use to, improve the performance space.
Okay.
But, so that's moving along, that should be done in January, and then when this part can kick in, we can update lights and sound, and then we'll have like state of the art space.
Okay, that'll be helpful and that will make sense as we go through the presentation. Next slide. So there's some important points to understand. So there is one permanent bonus with RIDE that is 5%, and it's called safety and security. And then there are many other temporary bonuses, but the only one that's really applicable to what we're doing is one called health and safety, which is another 5% temporary bonus. So I spoke to Mario this morning to better understand the difference between safety and security and health and safety. That's going to become important to Coventry to maximize their reimbursement over the next 5 years. There is a lot of latitude in the permanent bonus that's safety and security. That is the target for all of our work in Coventry. And I'll show you how that goes through. By focusing on the 5% permanent category and not worrying about this health and safety one that's temporary that expires, it means you're not going to have to commence construction by June 30th. And it's going to give you more opportunities for construction delivery methods. So for example, some districts who are coming up on the deadline of this health and of their temporary bonuses, they need to be under contract by June 30th of 2024. So they're running out and hiring a construction manager, which is absolutely fine on larger projects. The projects that you have in front of you for the next several years, in my opinion, do not require a construction management delivery method. That's why I wanted to make sure that we had a pathway with the permanent bonus of 5%, so that you're going to have some opportunities, which we're going to talk about as we go through. What is going to be important is the bundling of the projects, so that when you are submitting for housing aid, you're maximizing the reimbursement. Right now, your base is 48.2. We think you're gonna be able to get that additional 5% every time you submit for housing aid. And I'll show you the path for that. Next slide. So the path to maximizing your reimbursement when you're submitting for housing aid is to bundle various project types where 75% of the value is safety related and 25% can be other. That will give you that additional 5%. So at every time when you submit in July for housing aid, we want that total amount of money, 75% of it to be safety related, and 25 to be others, so that you're getting 53% back instead of 48. And I will show you where that is. By going this method, our recommendation is to go general contracting lump sum bid on all of these projects, and we'll show you how we're bundling them. That means you don't have to rush before this June 30th deadline to hire a construction manager, because we're going after this 5% permanent bonus. So when you hear people talk about bonuses expiring for Coventry, this approach, it doesn't matter. Because the work we're trying to do is safety related, the majority of it, and I'll show you, is safety related, and it's a permanent bonus. So you'll likely be extending this work over several summers, a few years. It's going to allow the district to contract directly for convenience for some of these smaller projects where you don't need my help, you don't even need a general contractor's help. Russ could work directly with a vendor to do something. You would avoid potential A&E fees on some of these projects. We can work with Russ to make sure we're going through the process correctly for reimbursement, but you may not even need our involvement. So let's go ahead.
Sorry, the 24 date doesn't matter, but is there still the 2029 completion date?
Well, no, because it's a permanent bonus.
Okay.
So there's no completion date either, but you'll see I don't go that far. So if we look at the high school, I highlighted in yellow the FEI projects, which this is the share that Coventry has for that grant. The red dots are projects that I identified as falling into the safety category. And I put a little check mark there. So at the school, we have 75%, more than 75% of safety projects.
I've
Don?
seen the restrooms there, I would reckon that would be a safe.
So,
But only a small amount, given
so,
what I,
when I looked at what they categorize as safety projects, it is a broad and liberal interpretation. So if we needed to grab that one, we could.
my high school is such an unsafe.
There you go. Next one, Don. Same thing at the middle school. I put this little check mark here. We got plenty of projects that are falling into the safety category by itself.
Is there a reason you broke out all the, did you break out the gym improvements at the high school because they're part of the grant? And you just left it at one?
Yes,
Didn't get the
yeah,
percentage.
and to be, you'll see as we get into the schedule and the project priorities, I did not capture these ones because I did not know what the status was. I will going forward. But they won't fall into the safety.
No, I wouldn't think
They
so.
won't
I
need
just
to,
was
because they're coming from a grant. Let's go to the next school, Western, again, check mark, plenty of safety projects at Western. We're gonna go into these details a little bit more. Washington Oak, it doesn't, there are safety projects there, but it's not falling into that 75% category, and that's okay. You'll see why it doesn't really matter at the end. Same thing at, I believe the next one's Hopkins Hill, same thing, doesn't categorize as enough for 75%. That doesn't mean we're not gonna get reimbursed on all these, I'm just talking about bundling. And next one, Tayo does not, and Black Rock does not. That was just high level. So I want to talk about each school in particular, and some strategies that we're talking about initially. So at the high school, we are suggesting that the fire suppression project, I'd say, is standalone, meaning that can be its own project. That's at about 2.7 million. We're suggesting that that work begin next summer. So we would have a consultant, Jensen Hughes, Russ, we've been involved with Jensen Hughes at the high school already. I asked them, I said, if we were to start now, could we start some sprinkler work next summer? He said, yes. Then we may go through the school year, but definitely be there next summer. So fire suppression, standalone project, 2.7 million, summer of 2024 through summer of 2025. You submit for housing aid July of 26. The project has to be substantially complete. You will not be substantially complete by the summer of 2025. This one would be 2026.
So the interesting thing about this one as well is Russ and I had to go to the state fire marshal on that, and they gave us a due date with some opportunity for extensions. So we'll probably have to go before them again. I think once the work gets started, they're gonna be satisfied that we're moving along. But you know, they've been waiting on this bond to go through so that we can get this moving. So we'll probably have to go before them again, Russ, to maybe with Jensen Hughes, get another extension. Just sort of completed.
All right. So Russ, we identified some HVAC improvements at the high school. Again, this should be standalone work. This may be work that you just do with a vendor if you're looking for a replacement in kind, or if it becomes a little bit more involved. But we think that could be summer of 2024, could be 2025 if need be. But I don't know exactly to what extent the HVAC projects at the high school are needed. So we'll have some more discussion. The sanitary septic here, it's a standalone at 1.2 million. Our part, our share. This is probably not summer of 2024. This is more like summer of 2025. Well, this is start.
Yes, I thought. When did you say yes, when we start that project?
It's gonna be started next summer, summer of 24 start.
Oh, it's gonna start in 24.
Start in 24, but won't be substantial probably until the following beginning of 25 complete.
So
Or
it's
9
about
months,
9
9 to
months.
12 months.
All right, so you may grab the substantially complete, so you could put it for the housing aid in July of 2025. It's not gonna be 2024, it's that much more involved project. But I did want to remind everybody that if we get the reimbursement, we'll want to make sure we are complying with the school building authority. So this is one that we sort of packaged. Any site work, the vestibule and restrooms, we would recommend that to be about one GC package for about $3 million. So it would be the design work for the general contractor. So it would be any design work for the vestibule, the site work, the restrooms, put it all together. $3 million is a nice little project for a general contractor. We don't think that would be ready till summer of 2025. And then submit for housing aid in July of 2026. The reason why submitting for housing aid is going to be important is because we'll want this number to be 75% safety projects and then 25% of whatever. And then there's miscellaneous improvements. And again, I have district/vendor, about $600,000. I pushed it off to the summer of 2025 because these may be projects that Russ could do directly with a vendor. And I don't know what those projects are. We left it kind of broad. Bride is going to approve it broad. But I do think you'll want to have the fire suppression project done, any HVAC work done. We'll want to know what the costs are for the vestibule, the restrooms, and any site work. So what's left over could be spent in 2025 or later. So I did this for each one. So
So just a quick question, could we complete the work, say we are substantially complete, complete by 25, would you hold off on reimbursement instead of package it? Or is it gonna be like percent, like hold on to it?
So that then is going to lead into, what is the plan for the bond sale? What is the plan for any pay-go money? You know, for example, are you gonna go out and take all 25 million at once and put it in a bank account?
Yes.
Okay, so that's that.
That's the thing, we're gonna bond.
That's what Steve Masseroni recommends right now.
So
Won't be till April or May though of next year.
April, May of next year. So what you'll want to do is start to think when reimbursement will come in. And when the bond payments start to be due. And you then may elect to hold some projects. But if we are already at that 75% value, then I would submit for housing aid that year. I would actually try to submit every year. And that's what we're trying to do, make it so you can submit every year for housing aid and get that extra 5%. All it means is we need to be a little strategic about the projects that we're bundling together. So we took our first pass at it. We think we're pretty close on this.
So if the strategy lands, it's like about 75.
Yes.
Plus 25, 26.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
And the benefit of that is it also gives us, it helps us with our minimum maintenance requirement responsibility that we have to budget for every single year. We use housing needs and help offset.
So what I did not yet include in the high school are the FBI projects, so we'll go ahead and put that in the next round, and I'm working on a table that may make this a little bit easier to understand. So let's look at the high school. The roof, that's a standalone project at 4.2 million. I've talked to a couple roofing guys. They said if we get this out on the street around March, they would not have a problem starting it next summer. So that's summer of 2024, submit for housing aid, July 2025. Again, Russ, with the HVAC improvements, whatever the strategy is going to be at the high school, unit replacement or something a little bit more involved, could do it next summer, or it could be the summer after.
And some of those things we coordinate together because they're rooftop units. And if we're doing some of the roofing work, some of those rooftop units are going to be replaced.
That would be the time. So great. Then I combined this project, the gymnasium and restrooms, and that would be one general contract package for about $3.2 million. Nice little GC package, but again, we won't be ready for that until the summer of 2025. Any site improvements at the middle school, now I'm identifying them as standalone. There's only $600,000. Targeting the summer of 2025. Could be sooner, depending upon what is decided upon at the middle school. For example, this is something that Russ could say, hey, we're gonna, restrike the parking lots, something like that. And then I deferred again to the end, the miscellaneous improvements that we had. And again, district vendor. You may allocate that differently, maybe some next summer, maybe the summer after. Western. So let's talk about Western. We have right now on our domestic water distribution. I have that as a standalone project at 660,000. So what's the status of anything at Western with the well and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. So we, listening to the outfit, Russ, Northeast Water.
Northeast Water.
So they came out, they've been involved with the Western well for a little while. They were the group that helped engineer and design the filtration system that's currently there now. They came out, visited, they gave us a basic estimate, but they also helped us put an application to Department of Health to get some funding from them to pay for the design phase. So they're in the design phase, going into the design phase now, but we're not paying for it because we got the money from the state to pay for it. So that's kind of happening now. And he talked about us potentially being in a position once the design phase is over to capture some other money, depending on some other things they discover. For example, there's money for corrosion that lives in a different pot than the design phase money, there's different pots, so he said he would do whatever he could to maximize, what's his name, Russ, I can't remember.
His name was Dave, but it's Larry Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would do whatever they could, they worked in Smithfield, and North Smithfield, a bunch of places, they would help us capitalize it. But one of the strategies he talked about, which I'll throw out there now, but we can talk about it later, he said that, the infrastructure bank allows you to get, like $200,000 of loan for this. So he said, what we could theoretically do is, the strategy would be to go to the infrastructure bank, get a loan, do the project, get the $200,000 loan forgiveness, and then use the bond to pay it off, like immediately. That way you don't get hit with interest. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but he said there is an opportunity to get some savings with that kind of strategy as well.
Did they give you any type of timeline?
I don't know, I mean, I think once the design phase is over and they've maximized all our opportunities, I think the next thing would be, we could potentially use that to, cause he's an engineer, help us, figure out what the RFP would look like, we probably could go out, get after that. So maybe during the summer?
I would think so.
All right, so we'll
We'll
wanna,
hold you to that.
we'll wanna track this because similar to the other projects, we will wanna make sure we go through the RISE process to make sure you get reimbursed. I was thinking they could do something next summer.
Maybe, we'll have to, we just met with him last week, so we'll
Yeah.
keep doing it.
All right, we would like to be involved in that, so we could start tracking it. Because that would be considered one of the safety projects. And when we submit for housing aid on that, we always just need to be sure we keep hitting that 75% somehow. That's all. So, all right, that's fine. At Western, we would recommend combining the restrooms and any interior finishes, that into one GC lump sum package for about $2 million. And that would be the summer of 2025. Window replacement, we would recommend a standalone project in the summer of 2025 for $1.2 million. It's just not enough time to do design work and be able to do this during the summer. Same thing for the restrooms and the windows. Site improvements, this is only $100,000, so it could be 2025, could be sooner if it's just a small amount of work. But we would suggest submitting that in 2026, and same thing with the miscellaneous improvements, which is really only $40,000, which is not a lot of money, but there may be things. Curtains, yeah, window treatments for the $1.2 million with windows. All right, let's go to the next one, Washington Oak. Washington Oak is HVAC improvements. I think that's a standalone project. It's only $180,000. This could be the replacement of just 3 or 4 rooftop units. But I'm not doing anything in 2024 at Washington Oak. It's all in 2025, because I think you want to have some of your other major projects either done or priced in case you need to start transferring funds between schools to cover something like Tioga, for example. And this is just the same: site improvements, miscellaneous improvements, interior finishes. These are all standalone projects that the district could do with its own vendor. Still recognizing you got to go through the RIDE process, but you don't need to get too many people involved if you want to paint the school or something like that. And then Hopkins Hill, Tioga, and Black Rock are all the same. Russ, I did identify the HVAC improvements, which is this mechanical piping that we talked about last winter, in the summer of 2024. And at least my understanding was that that was an important project to keep the buildings up and running.
Absolutely.
So we did plug that in for the summer of 2024. Again, the site improvements, miscellaneous improvements, and interior finishes are all spread through 2025. When I went over this with Mario, he did ask if there was any way that the money for Hopkins Hill, Tioga, or Black Rock, and that's probably not the case, could come from somewhere else other than the bond. Because let's say in the next, I know you will be wildly successful with this project, and in 10 years, if you wanted to knock some of these buildings down and consolidate, people tend to not react well to knowing that they're bonding money for a building that you end up knocking down before the 20 years. So I told him I would present that. I don't think that's the case. Just be mindful that
I think we wouldn't have bonded for it if that was a.
Well,
But I do see what your character is.
So tell me. Is it, I don't know the answer, so I'm asking you a question, I'm trying to phrase it properly, right? It was my impression we had a whole bunch of needs, and we also had a concern that people would be upset if something didn't happen to their school. And what it boils down to now is being about $1.5 million to kind of try to make it look good. So my point is to your point, if we really, if there's not a real need at either Minotown, we just don't know about the ground at Iowa, then why would we do it to spend another $1.5 million if we were just trying to, oh, everybody's school's gonna do a little bit of something, that's what's trying to do. So, but I don't know if that's
HVAC is necessary,
and
no matter.
Russ, I don't know if you want to speak to that mechanical piping issue at these three schools.
find the real needs, I guess.
Yeah.
It is a big concern. Whether they are steam pipes that heat the building. And I think I discussed it one other time here, that one exploded right when we were in there. They're so corroded and they just let go. They just rotted through. They were all original. We were saying, good thing there was no kids in the class. The steam just came right across the classroom and flooded out the two rooms. I think I sent Donnie a video of that. It was bad, bad. And I have some examples, and I've saved the pipes that we cut out, because that's actually gonna go to Larry, you know, Don, for that, money that we're gonna get back for the corrosion end of it too on some of them. And Weston is just as bad. And,
Is
you
that
know
included in
how
the
much
six
we've
hundred thousand?
changed down there, right?
Is the changing out that piping, is that included in the 600,000 for the well? Like, no.
Yeah, I think it is.
Is it? Yeah.
Oh, good.
We've left ourselves a lot of flexibility.
That, when we budgeted that, our thinking was the cost of the design that was covered, the digging of the well, and then the repiping of the water distribution throughout the building.
Okay, because what it is, it's all settled in those pipes now, you know, and if you're having kids go back in, if we're doing a new well, we're doing a new tank, let's do the pipes, and it's gonna be a great thing, you know, you're gonna have clean water down there.
So, Lolita, for example, that's why I just said the only work we would do next summer at these other schools is like a severe emergency need. And then, you know, let's settle on the other major projects and see what happens here. You have 5 years for this expenditure, and really, we're not going beyond maybe the next 2.5.
Ask one other question?
Yeah.
So the way you're recommending this, the standalones, I think, kind of speak, but when you say, you say kind of standalone, you know, site, standalone here by school, but the intent would be like all of the site would be made like one person, right?
One
For some
contractor
economy
for
or
all
across all
yeah.
three schools, standalone as far as not related to the other.
Yes,
All of the
exactly.
site, all of the HVAC
Yeah.
upgrades to one, okay.
For example, if Russ wanted to paint all the buildings, that would be
Yes.
one painting contractor that would do all 3, 4, 5.
Sure.
Next slide.
Can I ask on the pricing? So it looks like the one project you didn't put into the timeline, you might have spoken to it earlier, is, the bond, the one that has the grant behind it, like the gym,
The FEI,
everything in the gym, the science lab, the fitness center. So what's the timeline there?
yeah, I need to think about, I don't have that accounted for yet. But I will. So in summary, there's a high degree of confidence in achieving that additional 5% every time you submit for housing, which is really a good thing. It will require us to monitor and pay attention to our project cost expenditures, and that's why this committee exists. We just need to be smart about what we're packaging together. And I feel like we're pretty close already. Next. So there's some additional things to just keep in mind that starting next year, projects under 2 million do not require an OPM. That's a good thing because that's a savings to the project in its entirety. There's percentage points associated with that. And the projects under 500,000 only require one submission to the RIDE School Building Authority. I think that may be something that you'll need our help with. Even if Russ is doing these projects, I'll say on his own, still need to go through the process. Next. So OPM and construction delivery method discussion here. So our recommendation for construction delivery is just going to be general contractor, lump sum bid, all projects, where we design, bid, build. On the ones that we talked about packaging together, the restrooms, the vestibule, stuff like that. And the district may contract directly with a vendor on select projects. We need to be sure to follow the RIDE School Building Authority guidelines. That's all. Next. So discussions about the OPM. Our recommendation would be to limit the OPM scope of work and only retain them for project values over 2 million. You have to. We should be specific in what their duties and responsibilities are, define the expectations. You may want to consider this group creating an executive committee, which is a smaller group of maybe, 5 people. It would have bi-weekly meetings where you would talk about what the limits are of the decision-making for that executive group. As you get into projects, change orders will evolve, right? We'll put something out to bid, something happens. We cannot just tell a contractor to do it. You want a very clear path to bring it to someone's attention, just so everybody understands. For example, change order authorization may be, well, Don can authorize change orders up to, $15,000 without having to bring it back to the building. You guys can define the rules for the building. Some committees, every change order has to go to them. That's just a disaster, right? We don't want to do that. You want to work with a small executive committee because when these things are under construction, decisions need to be made quickly. The OPM, the role of the OPM can be whatever you define it to be. Chalmette, Gilbane, myself, we all have experience with all the OPMs here. There's only about 4 or 5 of them. And they all have their value. But the types of projects that you're going to be doing and the value of the projects you're going to be doing may not require all of the robust amenities that an OPM can bring. And in my opinion, as I said, these smaller projects, everyone needs to be much more agile, flexible, and nimble. And I don't think we want to go down the path of unnecessarily having to include another group on every email and every decision. So we can help you with that. You could probably select the OPM off of the MPA list because of the value and what your expectations are. But I'd rather you save those percentage points for the projects. That's all.
So make sure I understand. The roof of the middle school is like a $3 million+ project.
So if you hold that thought, go to the next slide. I think I group them together and it may help. Let's skip this slide for a second. We can come back to it. All right, here you go. So if we look at the summer of 2024, the fire suppression system, 2.7 million, sanitary septic, 1.2 million, the roof at 4.2 million. So next summer, there is 4, 5, 6, 7, $8 million worth of work. This would want to have, this would need an OPM. But we can define the responsibilities and expectations of the OPM. And
It's just the thought of it for a new replacement.
Right, I'm with you.
Well, that's why we're like this, you know, it's gonna be one vendor, one person doing the job. I know it's an expensive product, but it's
But
one.
I think your responsibility to be something very limited, because you price.
Yeah, it could be, so I guess what I'm saying is, if this is what we're doing next summer. We could help draft an RFP that you could use to get your OPM so that you are compliant. But you're not unnecessarily paying for services that you don't need. Yeah, you could go back up to the slide.
And everything else is under 2 million once you get out of the summer, so in theory, that hurdle is cleared and that.
And we may have to bring back maybe we write the RFP that you could bring that OPM back. The following summer for when we're doing a $2 million or $3 million GC package,
Oh, yeah.
right?
They say the restroom and gym.
Those were all 3 millions, 2 millions, so
Together.
you put them together and then you bring the OPM in for that. So at a high level, I see bringing the OPM in twice for basically 2 big groups of work. The first group, not very demanding. The second group, where we have multiple GC packages and projects, you may want a little bit more from them. But we would write it so you get them this year, and then maybe bring it back the following year. So regarding the schedule, there's some things we need to keep in mind. So we will want to consider what we talked about for the summer 2024 projects. Consider what the district is going to lead in terms of some of its direct vendor projects. Set this reoccurring school building committee meetings. But as I mentioned, consider an executive group that may meet more frequently to make decisions. You probably should vote to move select projects forward. Not tonight, but soon. Contractually, we're not obligated to do any stage 3 yet. The way the RFP was written is that you have the option of having us do stage 3. But you eventually should vote on that. Again, I think determine the long-term project sequence is just an ongoing thing that would happen at these school building committee meetings, which maybe are monthly. And these smaller executive committee meetings, if you want to do that, are a little bit more frequently. Maybe not now, but certainly as you start getting into construction. I think that at the end is just when we talk about the projects and then questions. So I know I dumped a lot on you. I think the biggest thing I want you to come away with is you're not rushing to hire a construction manager by the end of June 2024, which you may hear other districts talking about. And that's because we're going to pursue the 5% permanent bonus for safety through all of these projects, provided each time we submit, 75% of that dollar amount is safety related, which I think we can get there, and I'm working on a table that may show that a little bit clearer. And of course, all this changes when the actual bids come in too. And the last thing I'll say is, with all the bonds that have been recently passed and work that's already out on the street, I do not anticipate any de-escalation because the labor shortage will be a very real issue for the next several years. Now, we may be fortunate some of the projects that we're doing are smaller, lower tier, but still it involves the trades that are in demand. So basically your dollar may not go as far as we originally thought. That's what, which is why we want to try to save anywhere we can. Okay, that was it. Dr. Dixon.
I have a concern. Many of these projects are supposed to be started in the summer of 25. They're standalone. It seems that the responsibility is going to be on the director of facilities to somehow facilitate, manage, work with the vendors, etc. This seems like a very heavy load for one person. This is my own opinion, for one person who also has day-to-day work. I don't think this is a discussion for tonight, but I would like to see the school leadership team talk about the role of the director of facility And if he's gonna have the bandwidth and the resources to do all these projects and manage them, because there's a whole load of them in the summer of 25. He's not even gonna be able to go to Florida or anything for years. I mean, I say that jokingly, but I
No
mean,
days off,
Sorry, Russ.
no days off.
24/7, he's managing something. And it seems like a very heavy load and responsibility.
And that's where the role of the OPM can assist. And maybe in the summer of 2025, the OPM role is greater than what it is in the summer of 2024.
But there's still many standalone projects that don't have OPM beside that
Oh,
project.
no, but they could,
Oh, they
they
could,
could, that's what I'm
okay.
saying,
Yeah.
the role of the owner project manager is to help the owner.
Mhm.
And Russ may need more help in the summer of 2025 than he does in the summer of 2024, that's all.
I'm just saying, we need to bear that in mind
Yeah.
because
I'm not
there are
doing it.
limited resources here right now, and there's a lot of work.
Definitely have a different value. And GC would be kind of more specific to a point, except for the reason that they required them, right? And
Leah, could you please speak?
oh,
up a
sorry,
little bit?
there's a reason they require them, and I think they're especially useful to districts when, in the GC type of work, lump sum GC work, you know, kind of different from CM, so there's definitely gonna be a point where, to Phil's point, bringing them in definitely makes sense, but just some of these one-offs, like have no cam for a sprinkler system feels crazy, and or for roof replacement, and, but yeah, but we'll work with that, we'll make sure it's the right people, that we're not wasting money when we need more, money. That's
Like-
not what we thought.
I have one question. To whom does an OPM report?
The owner,
And the owner is
right now, the school building committee,
the school building committee. So that means that the OPM would come to meetings of the school building committee. Is that how it works?
yes.
Thank you.
Detailed updates of projects.
Any other questions?
No, I had just asked that question about FBI.
Oh, gosh, yeah, I gotta work on it.
And then also, should we assume, based on the cost of the gymnasium improvements at the middle school, that the breakdown would be similar for the high school? Like, high school has 2 gym floors, the improvements plus the bleachers for
Well, that,
$800,000.
no, that's the only, the district share, those projects are in the multi-millions.
Oh, okay, all right, makes sense.
And there are some benefits to bringing in like minority owned businesses, it's 15%, I think. Connected to those as well, we can get that back.
And what's your timeline for using that grant?
So I think it's supposed to be moving along by the end of June. of
Yeah, I
24.
think you should probably have a discussion with Mario to see.
Cause I had met with Dan, we had talked about, I may have to ask for another extension on that.
On the grant?
Funny you bring that up, because I had written that 10% WBMBE kind of question mark at the top of my page. As that starts to transition from a goal to a requirement. Right, and it's, the percentage is creeping up as we kind of blow all these into individual projects. Hitting those goals might become a little bit tougher. So it's just something we would need to keep an eye on as we're bidding all of these out and how we're gonna achieve that.
So one thing that we've seen is on these standalone single contractor projects, that they are given a waiver in terms of that. So for example, when you do the roofing project, we just go out to roofers and they can't meet it, that's not a problem.
Yeah, okay.
Sprinkler, just go out, no, but the GC project ones, the general contractor ones, they should be able to meet the 15%. And that's, I think we'll be more successful there. But these one-offs where the district going directly to the vendor.
Yeah.
Will be good.
The other question I had asked Mario, and I'm not gonna repeat the answer because I don't want to get it wrong, but I did ask him specifically, like, if the company we partner with, the vendor, doesn't meet the requirement, but their supplier, the major suppliers do, for example, let's say we're talking about the gym floor at the high school, and the person who does that job is not a women or minority owned company, but their major supplier, the person who supplies the wood from the floor, or the bleachers is, does that mean we meet the criteria?
You track second tier. We do that all the time.
It was only like 60%
Have we incurred any costs now that are gonna be charged to this grant once we do get it?
We haven't,
Nothing.
because I mean, me personally, I was so, are you talking about the facility?
No,
equity
for
grant?
this,
The whole bond?
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't done anything,
Nothing.
because, honestly, we were just waiting to see what it has, so.
And
there's nothing.
contractually, we were just to get you to this point. So I'm here pro bono tonight. No, yeah, I've been in contact for years.
Backup.
And I brought. Crazy.
so,
Didn't invite-
But
so if we're gonna engage you going forward, you need a whole new contract. Cause your
Yes, and-
term is ended, if you wanna say.
correct,
Yeah.
and we should, and so, when you talk about moving forward, what projects do you wanna do next summer? And then we would just group them together, so our services will be for everything you do next summer. Or our services will be for everything we do next summer, and maybe some support for Russ to go through the writing process. So, yeah, eventually we need to submit a proposal and then be under contract and then charge it to whatever. Are you gonna be talking about PAYGO or anything like that tonight?
I don't know, maybe.
All right,
I do know that if we access PayGo, that comes out of, my understanding, that comes out of housing aid. Right? Like, you don't get the same housing aid reimbursement if you. front load.
correct, PAYGO's just front loading.
So I guess the reason I'm saying that is because when we're thinking about the calculation and the percentage and what we're gonna get back, and what applies to like the minimum wage requirement or other things, we want to be cautious that if we take money up front, that there's a trickle down. So, but I wasn't saying that.
That's all I have.
We covered agenda items 5, 6, and 7, I think, so we can move on to 8, project communication planning.
It was Eve gonna also chime into the timeline and schedule the discussion.
Oh, should we?
Will you get a time to chime in also?
If you want me to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
that was sort of
Yep.
the intent.
Yep.
Okay, so the next step is for the, either the right approval, which may be, and then the council taking action to authorize the issuance of bonds prospectively. We do that not because you're gonna issue the bonds within a month after that, but just to lock in tax exemption for the bonds for any of your non-architect expenses or non-engineering expenses. I don't think that'll be significant yet. At that point, the council authorizes the bonds. From then on, you would have to establish a procedure, the council would need to establish a procedure for the approval of contracts to be funded by the bonds. So for example, if there's any costs you've incurred to date, we may need to ratify those contracts, or if with the architect, the new contract, which I believe says it has to go to the school building committee, recommends it to the school committee, recommends it to the council, and you all approve it, because it sounds insanity. Multiple approvals, but that's the way things are set up. So we just need to be careful of that. So if you intend, the council intends that there be some leeway on authorization for change orders up to whatever amount, and who's to approve that, it would need to be in the council's the actions taken by the council as well. So whether the council wants to proceed with the bond, a generic bond authorization now, or wait till see what RIDE gets back, that might be the better procedure, just to see where this heads with RIDE. And hopefully they will lock in. Do you believe that, Phil, do you believe that they'll cite in their approval what bonuses the town is eligible for? Or you think that,
I don't think so. No, they won't. The MOA that you'll get will have the name of the school and the dollar amount next to it. And tell you, when it expires, 5 years from now. some districts have needed this letter of potential bonuses to pass the bond, but that's not really the case here.
Well, we kind of are because your reimbursement ratio seems to have dropped by 1%. So that may be something we need to follow up with Mario or whatever, because remember originally when this bond was proposed, they were talking about adding all the bonuses in and saying that putting in the bond that it could be 69% reimbursement or something like that, and we kind of thought generally that maybe that was pushing the envelope, and so we scaled it back. And so we probably need to know what those bonuses that might be eligible.
Yeah, and I think what Mario will tell you, you're only gonna be eligible for the 5%. So,
Unless you take this action to have a construction manager about some project.
no, I think you'll still be stuck at 5%. Because you're not closing any schools, you're not increasing utilization. And even the student-centric projects are not the only one that barely comes close, which I think is more safety related. Or I would make an argument that it's safety related, would be the science labs. So we certainly can ask Mario, and Mario is still a member of this committee, so maybe he should attend a meeting, but the max I think you're gonna get is 5%.
Okay,
And
well,
then,
that'll cover it anyway, as long as it's enough to use it's the ratio we were given. We scaled it back to your ratio as we knew it when we passed the bonds, which was 49 and 49, and now it seems to be 48.
so, and I put that off of the most recent,
I know,
uh,
I just looked at it.
all right, you looked
You know,
at it,
just-
yeah, so,
I realized that.
Ride lowered their base from 49 to 48.
They just like,
They publish it every year.
I was gonna say, so if it goes up prior to submitting, we get one.
I don't know. I don't know if it's when you'll get your approval from RIDE for this MOA, which will come around mid-December. Where it will list your base rate.
Any other
Write
comments?
it into the MOA? Can we write it in there to say if it changes, we reserve the right to?
Only in the positive.
Right.
Probably be the first to get it, but
You never know.
Yeah, when you don't play.
Only if it goes up.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you for that, Dave. Now we can move on to project communication planning.
So, Hillary and I were talking about this, and she asked me to put it on because, and I think Dan was part of the conversation at one point. So we feel it's important that as we start moving through projects, that we do a really good job of communicating to the public, the status of projects, the completion schedules, show off the projects that are done, maybe put signage, like, this project was funded by the school construction bond, the community supported the bond. We want to make sure that the community knows where their money's going and that they're getting, there's an impact on that. So I already talked to Jim, he's gonna have a dedicated website, where we can post pictures and videos and things like that, but, I think for further conversations, we just need to think about it as a group, how we want to, what's our communication strategy on just making sure people know what's happening in town and that, the money was spent the way it was intended to be spent. Well, I really wanted to say, if there's any questions, I'll answer them, but we don't wanna forget that part of the process.
Questions? All right, we can next move on to public comment. Anyone want to speak? Public comment? No public comment. So that being said, is there a motion to adjourn? For a second,
Second,
all in favor?
aye.